saving lives is the main function of a ladder company, then venting, entering, and searching a fire building are the ways to make that possible. Vent, enter, search. In one way or another, each member of a ladder company is concerned with VES, none more so than the roofman. I'm firefighter Joe McGee. The roof position at a fire is a vital one. By providing upward ventilation, the roofman creates an avenue through which heat, smoke, and gases within a building can rise and get out. The benefits from this are substantial. Not only does it allow firefighters within the building to see better and to operate more efficiently, but occupants will have a better chance to escape, and the survival time for unconscious or trapped victims will be increased. In addition, good venting will make the roofman's job easier, because after venting, he must enter and search the building, VES. But before getting into the specifics of the roof position, the ways and means to get to a roof, and what to do once there, a few general observations are in order. If you're the roofman, take the extra time when you arrive at a fire to size up the situation. For example, are you the first arriving roofman? Where in the building is the fire? Front, rear, near the roof? Is there an adjoining building? The answer to these questions will allow you to make some of the decisions the roofman's job requires. Next, communications. Although the roofman works largely by himself, he's not entirely alone. There's always the handy-talkie. Use it, not only to tell others of your progress and your findings, but to let the officer know about problems you may be having. What are they? Where are they? What are your intentions? Don't be afraid to use the handy-talkie, but when you do, be clear, brief, and to the point. To go over the basics of roof work, Lieutenant Jay Tavallero is here. He worked in Ladder 102 in Bed-Stuy. And John McKernan from Ladder 14 in Harlem is out in the field. John, are you all set to go from out there?
Yes, Joe, I can read you loud and clear.
John will be standing by, and during the program, he'll be able to demonstrate some of the features under discussion. In addition, as an experienced roofman, he'll be lending his own expertise. Lou, let's start with tenements, which include the common non-fireproof apartment house.
It's a good place to start, Joe, since they can be found all over the city.
What are the tools to be taken by the roofman?
For this type of building, we'll take a 6-foot hook, Halligan tool, and a flashlight. Also, 2 ropes, a utility rope and a life-saving rope. If the roofman does not have his personal harness, he must take the Atlas life belt to the roof. If you're new to the company, detailed or overtime, know where the tools are located at the start of the tour. By that I mean not only those mentioned, but also at least the saw, the portable ladders, and any special or unique tools.
Okay. Lou, how about the size up at a tenement? What elements should be included?
Actually, your size-up starts in the firehouse with the receipt of the alarm. The teleprint information could include the building's dimensions along with the type of building. For example, non-fireproof, fireproof. Or even if people are trapped, and also if you are first or second through truck. There's a possibility it could be just a box alarm with no information. Next, during your response, any information transmitted by the dispatcher will be passed along to you by the officer. So there's a good chance you might have a picture of this situation before you arrive. And there's also a possibility it could be totally wrong. So you must remain flexible. When you get there, do a size up to confirm your information and add to it. What do you have? Old law tenement, a new law tenement, or an apartment house? How many stories are there? How near to the roof is the fire? Which way is the wind blowing? Take note of the windows. If they're thermopane, venting may be a problem. Thermopane windows have 2 layers of glass. Now, plan your way to the roof. Where, if any, are the fire escapes? Can trapped people be seen? Which means the area ladder or the bucket cannot be counted on as a way to the roof. It may be used for rescue. Is there an adjacent building which can be used to get up there? This is the preferred way for tenements. So look to be sure that they're nearly the same height as the fire building. If it's much higher or lower, will not be the way to go. Also, note any unusual features, such as fences or wire on the roof. This could block your movement onto the roof of the fire building. If you decide not to use the adjacent building, your next choice is the aerial ladder or the tower ladder. If that's being used to make a rescue, you must use the rear fire escape. At tenement fires, if there is a rear fire escape, use it as your third choice to the roof. If possible, get to it from an exterior, perhaps by going through an alley. If not, go through one of the apartments in the fire building. An apartment below the fire, and preferably one that is not in the same line as the fire apartment. Also, in a new law tenement, underneath the interior stairs, generally there's a door which leads to an alley, which brings you to the rear of the fire building.
New law tenement. What's a good way for a roofman to know if a building is a new law tenement?
Generally, if there are more than 4 windows across the front per floor, it's a new law tenement.
So those are the 3 choices in getting to the roof of a fire building. An adjacent building, the aerial or tower ladder, and finally, the fire escape.
Joe, I'd like to add something. Remember, never use the interior stairs to get to the roof. It could become filled with heat and smoke, and you could become a casualty.
Good point, John. What else do you have for us?
Vacant building. If your adjacent building is vacant, it's no longer your best option. Use a different adjacent building, or if you don't have one, or if that's vacant, then use your aerial, your tower ladder, or the rear fire escape to get to the roof. An RO over a vacant building symbol is especially significant for a roofman since it means roof is open. Additional hazards will exist due to previously cut holes in the roof. Once the roofman gets to the roof, he may find that the roof has already been vented. In that case, he reports this to the officer on the handy-talkie. This is important. The vacant building symbol is only a guideline. The actual conditions found in the building may be far worse than the symbol indicates.
Okay, John. Lou, let's back up a minute and assume that the roofman has made a size-up and conditions look right for him to go up through the adjoining building.
Which is choice 1.
What if he were to find that the bulkhead door was impossible to open?
That would be rare, but it could happen. Communicate to your officer the reason for delay, then get to the rear fire escape through an apartment, then to the roof.
Ladder 120, roof to 120. The bulkhead is chained shut. I'm going to be delayed getting the roof. 10-4. Fire department!
Since the roofman carries a fair amount of equipment, steady, purposeful progress is the key to getting up there.
Worst case scenario.
This route might have to be abandoned.
In reality, what are the chances of that happening?
Very slim. Almost always, the roofman makes the roof through the adjoining building. In any case, he does not quit.
Fire department! Fire department! Ladder 120, roof to 120. 120. All the apartments on the top floor of the
he goes for Plan B, the area ladder or the tower ladder, or Plan C, the rear fire escape of the fire building. One way or another, he gets to the roof. Also, don't forget, the second-due roofman should, by now, be making his way to the roof.
Using a different route from that being used by the first roofman.
Right, because the first roofman may be jammed up. However, if the first-due roofman makes it to the roof, the second-due roofman should take the same route as the first-due roofman.
Ladder 120 roof to 103 roof.
103 roof.
Be advised I was able to reach the roof via exposure 4.
10-4.
While we're on it, Lou, what's a good way for the second roofman to be sure of the route that was taken by the first roofman?
Easy, Joe. He just gets on the handy-talkie.
120 roof to 123 roof. 123 roof to 120 roof, go ahead. What route did you take to the roof, Kay? I went up the building on the exposure 4 side and over the top. 10-4.
Okay. Next up, the second choice in getting to the roof, the aerial or tower ladder. John.
First, a word about ladder placement. If possible, place the aerial ladder upwind from smoke to give the roofman better visibility when he climbs. In any case, if visibility is bad, don't get off the ladder until you are sure that there is a roof, and if there is, how much of a drop there is to get to it. Probe with the hook, and if need be, drop the Halligan tool to hear it hit. Once you've determined there is a roof below you, and depending upon the drop, you may have to get down to the roof by lowering yourself using the hook. Your first concern when you get up here is to open the bulkhead door. Now these doors are almost always self-closing, so make sure you either chock it open or break off the top hinge.
John, what if it's tough to get the bulkhead door open? What do you recommend doing?
If you tried forcing it and couldn't get it open, and the second roofman has not yet arrived to help, let the officer know and go for the skylight. If heavy fire conditions are obvious, remove the glass furthest from your position first, then the glass closest to you.
And if he has arrived?
Search just inside. An occupant may have tried to escape to the roof and did not make it. Remember the RO symbol that we mentioned earlier? Well, you would expect to see that on the bulkhead over here, and also downstairs by the front entrance and the side entrance, along with the vacant building symbol. Next, let the officer know that the bulkhead door is open.
10-4.
If there's a lot of smoke coming out, vent the skylight.
Ladder 120 roof to
Use the
120.
handy-talkie to let people know.
I'm about to
Work
take
with your
that
back to
skylight
the
above
wind.
interior stairs,
Take
Kay.
out just one pane. As it drops, it will alert other firefighters inside the building that the skylight is going to be vented and that they should stand clear. And here's a tip. When you're dismounting the bulkhead, make sure you climb down in the same place that you climbed up. If not, and it's smoky, you may find yourself climbing off where there is no roof. Okay, now you're ready to begin collecting info for your roof report. This is a very important part of your job. It's the only radio communication that you'll make that requires an acknowledgement. You give your report to the chief or the officer in charge. Of course, everyone else who has a radio will be benefiting from what you're seeing up here. Check down the sides, down air shafts. You're concerned with two major areas: victims, can you see anyone who needs our help? And fire conditions. Where can you see fire and smoke? Not only in the fire building itself, but in exposures as well. Try to give a brief word picture of what it is you're seeing. After all, you're in the best spot to see what's happening around the exterior of the building.
Ladder 120 roof to 3-4 battalions.
3-4, Kay.
We got fire blowing out the rear 3 windows on the top floor, Kay.
3-4, 10-4.
A good tip when describing roof conditions is to use the terms front and rear, side 2 and side 4 when you're describing the fire building. The word exposure should only be used in reference to adjoining buildings. Open up other shaft coverings on the roof. If no smoke comes out, probe down inside with the hook to be sure they're clear. Okay, by this time you should have been joined by the other roofman who would have been helping you. Together, go down the fire escape to begin searching and venting from the top down to the floor above the fire.
20 roof to 120? Yeah, go ahead. Well, then we go down the rear fire escape to make a top floor circuit for the second door roofman. 120 roof, 10 floor.
If there is a gooseneck ladder, check it for stability and any missing steps. When using fire escapes, always face the steps for stability and safety. If conditions demand that you initiate a search alone, notify your officer. If you do not receive an acknowledgement or your handy-talkie is not working, do not attempt to enter a hazardous area alone. Probe for victims just inside the window and to be sure there's a floor that can hold you.
John, before going down, any last words for us? Anything about common hazards that might be found on the roof?
Okay, let me think. Watch out for clotheslines or low-hanging wires. Also, open shafts. Assume that a turned-over cover means that there is an open shaft nearby. Tarred-over patches, which can be spotted because they don't quite match the rest of the roof. They might indicate a lack of support underneath. Avoid them. Also, when crossing from one building to another, when visibility is bad, use the front of the roof to cross because the depths of the buildings may vary.
Lou, can you think of anything else?
Not about hazards on a roof, Joe, but something else. To emphasize what John said about going down a rear fire escape, it's definitely the way to go. The interior stairs should be avoided. Maybe when the bulkhead was open, there was only a little smoke coming out. It might have seemed an easy way to get downstairs. The problem with this is that you might get partway down and the fire department may vent, sending a blast of heat and smoke up the stairwell in your direction, which of course means you could be in a world of trouble.
So use the rear fire escape to go down.
Right.
Lou, let's talk about searching. What if the apartments in the fire building do not run from front to rear?
Which is the case in many buildings. When that happens, all of the apartments, especially the apartments above the fire, must be searched.
If the fire apartment is in the front, how does the roofman get to it?
When teamed up with the second-door roofman, they shall make their way from the rear apartment and the public hall. To assure the door does not lock behind them, they should chock it open.
Should the halls be searched?
Definitely.
And if a victim is found?
Anytime you find a victim, alert your officer and the chief. Remove the victim to a safe area. Start first aid or CPR.
Roof to 120. I got a 1045. Top floor rear. 120, 10 floor.
Should a roofman continue on?
Only after being relieved. Then continue their search. There may be more victims. Work until you've linked up with the other truck company. Then inform them of any areas that you have not searched and still require searching.
I just completed the search of the rear two apartments. We'll get the front.
Then the roofman joins his company.
Right.
Before going on to brownstones and row frames, John, is there anything that you would like to add?
If it is a top floor fire, stay on the roof and vent windows using the hook or Halligan tool tied to a rope. Also, a word about thermopane windows. They are difficult to break, so give it your best shot. Some companies have developed special tools to do the job. If you find yourself up against these windows, use the handy-talkie to let everybody know.
120 roof to 120.
120.
I've got thermopane windows up here.
10-4.
Next up, row frames and brownstones. Why are these two different types of buildings, constructed of different materials, treated in the same fashion as far as fire strategy is concerned?
Because they share a great many construction features, both occupy whole or part of city blocks. Often, they'll be of the same height, width, and depth. And much of the interior arrangements is similar in both.
As far as the roofman is concerned,
And open interior stairs connect the main floor to the upper floors. Also, an iron ladder leads from the top floor to the roof.
no bulkhead.
For the most part, there is no bulkhead. There is a scuttle cover on the roof. The iron ladder is beneath the scuttle cover. Sometimes these buildings have been renovated, converted to multiple dwellings, and fire escapes are added,
Front, rear,
one or the other. A front fire escape will not go to the roof. Also, a conversion would have sprinklers in the halls and in the rooms if it was converted to a rooming house. One big problem with these places is a possibility of illegal occupancy.
wall-to-wall people.
Exactly. Row frames present an additional problem: fire spread. Sometimes a common cockloft can run a whole block. Also, of course, it's wood construction, means the exterior of the building can burn.
How about tool selection?
Almost the same as a tenement. 6-foot hook, Halligan tool, light, and a life-saving rope.
Should the size-up contain the same elements?
Yes and no. It's the same as far as building height, location of fire, and adjacent buildings. But for row frames and brownstones, the question of victim removal is an important consideration for the roofman during size-up.
How so?
For these type of buildings, the area ladder or the tower ladder is the preferred way to get to the roof, the #1 choice.
So if it's being used to get someone out of a window,
It won't be available for use by the roofman. That's why size-up is so important. If you see the area ladder will be needed to remove a victim, you must go to your second choice.
and of course, the area ladder may not be available for a number of other reasons as well.
Absolutely. Trees, overhead wires, a number of things can prevent its use.
Which leaves Plan B.
Right. The adjoining building. Access through the adjoining building could be difficult in brownstones and row frames because forcible entry may be needed to get in. That takes time. Scuttle ladders are sometimes surrounded by storage. The ladders may be missing or insecure, and the scuttle covers could be locked, chained, or tarred over.
What does the roofman do then?
He reports his problem on a handy-talkie and goes to another adjoining building.
And of course, the second-due roofman is also trying to get to the roof.
Right.
What have you got for us in the field, John?
Another thought on using Plan B, the adjoining building. In row frames, because of the possibility of quickly spreading fire in common cocklofts, roofmen should go at least 2 buildings away from the fire building to get to the roof, especially if there's a top floor fire. But not for a brownstone. Because of its construction, a brownstone is generally considered a 1-building fire. This can be seen by this parapet wall that runs from the rear of the building all the way up to the front. This division wall does a lot to prevent the horizontal spread of fire. There's also a parapet on the front, but none in the rear.
And row frames?
No rear parapet walls. Row frames and brownstones have no rear parapet walls. And another problem, the roofs slope, generally towards the rear. Some buildings have peaked roofs which could change the slope to almost any direction. That's a danger if there's ice on the roof. And in the rear of the building, you could also have a Yankee gutter extending out over the back. This feature is deceptive and dangerous. You might think it's a solid part of the roof that can hold you. Don't count on it.
What does the roofman do then?
Because most row frames and brownstones do not have rear fire escapes. He comes back here first to check for trapped occupants by looking and listening. Also look into courtyards and shafts. If you see anyone, contact your officer and give the exact location. Stay there. Calm the victim. Set up for a life-saving roof rope rescue. It will be needed if the forcible entry team can't reach the victim from the inside and the portable ladder from the rear is not successful. Remember, a rope rescue is not to be undertaken by one firefighter. No single slide rescues. If there are no victims, the scuttle cover is removed. If light smoke shows, it means the door below is probably closed. The roofman must try to open the door with his hook. Do not get down the scuttle ladder to open this door. It could be a trap. Notice that the roofman keeps his head and body off to the side. Next, the skylight is opened.
Except sometimes the skylight is open before the scuttle cover comes off.
Right. If it's a heavy smoke condition, open the skylight first. Basically, it's a judgment call by the roofman because the skylight is directly over the interior stairs. Make sure that the draft stop is also sufficiently removed to provide good ventilation.
Some of these roofs can have more than one skylight up there. What's a good way for a roofman to know which skylight would be over the stairs?
Almost always, it would be the biggest one.
Okay. John, you were saying?
And as with tenements, break out a little piece of glass first to let the people downstairs know what's going on.
How about using the handy talkie?
Absolutely. Announce to the world that the skylight is going to be vented.
A good idea. And don't forget to vent the draft stop, too. On brownstones and row frames, it's a pane of glass at ceiling level on the top floor. Also, at row frame top floor fires, the returns must be open to check for the presence of fire in the cockloft.
What information, Lou, should the roofman be giving to the officer?
I would like to know if there are any people trapped in the rear. Also, when the roof is vented. If any fire enters the cockloft in a row frame building, the roofman should notify the officer in command immediately.
If there are victims in the rear, what should the roofman do?
Stay there. Calm the victim. Set up for a life-saving rope rescue. It will be needed if the forcible entry team cannot reach the victim from the inside.
Lou, let's stop for a moment, back up. Say there are no victims, and it's a brownstone. Very unlikely, but this brownstone has a rear fire escape. What would the roofman do?
That's easy, Joe. He will go down the rear fire escape and search the top floor with the second-due roofman.
And for row frames?
Row frames, he'll do the same, except for a top floor fire. If there's a top floor fire, he shall remain on the roof and inform the officer in command if fire enters the cockloft.
Because of that very rapid fire spread that could be expected in a row frame.
Exactly.
As the city grows and replenishes its housing stock, we're seeing a wide range of designs for fireproof multiple dwellings. Lou, how is a roofman to know if a building is fireproof?
In most cases, there'll be no problem. A high-rise apartment building is fireproof. City projects are fireproof. A question may arise in buildings under 75 feet.
If the roofman is in doubt, what should he do?
When he's approaching the fire building, he should look for a fire escape. If the building doesn't have any fire escapes, it's fireproof. If he can't see any and still isn't sure, ask another member of the company before taking any action.
Fireproof multiple dwellings vary in height anywhere from 4 to more than 40 stories. Does this fact make size-up more difficult?
From my experience, I found it helpful to think of fireproof multiple dwellings as two different types. One is the shorter, under 75 feet, 4 to 6 story type. The other is the high-rise apartment type.
Let's take one building at a time. I'll tell you where the fire is, and you tell me what the roofman should do. Okay, the fire is in an apartment in a shorter building, and it is accessible and reachable by ladders.
In these shorter buildings, where the fire can be reached with the ladders, the roofman will take the 6-foot hook, Halligan tool, life-saving rope, and harness, or belt, and proceeds to the roof.
What is his route this time, Lou?
Because some of these buildings have unenclosed stairs and are usually built in clusters, his primary choice to the roof is the adjoining building. His second choice is the area ladder or tower ladder. And his third choice is the enclosed stairs within the fire building.
We have some videotape on these types of buildings. How about we roll it, and you describe the action as it's taking place? Okay?
Okay, Joe. Remember, in these shorter buildings, you can find enclosed or unenclosed stairs. In this example, each of the buildings have only one unenclosed stairway. The roofman takes the adjoining building to the roof and crosses over the roof to vent the bulkhead of the fire building. Checks for victims on the landing and informs his officer that the stairway is vented. Then checks all sides of the fire building for victims. If the building has enclosed stairs and the roofman chose to take the enclosed stairs in the fire building to the roof, he must first notify his officer which stairway he is taking. Chalk open the ground floor door, and when he reaches the roof door, chalk it open so the stairway is vented. If the building has two stairways, you have to chalk open the roof door to the other stairway. And inform the officer that the stairways are vented. And as always, you have to check the top floor landing and all sides of the fire building for victims.
Okay. Now, what if ladders could not reach the windows of the fire apartment in this building?
In this case, the roofman shall go to the floor above the fire, join with the OVM, force entry, and vent the fire floor windows.
Should those windows be vented immediately?
Definitely not. And it applies to both the shorter and the high-rise fireproof multiple dwellings. Before venting the fire apartment windows, chalk open the apartment door above the fire apartment. Then open the windows for two reasons: to check for any victims in the windows on the fire floor, and to simulate the same wind conditions that are affecting the fire apartment. You must notify your officer of any adverse wind effects and if it exists. Wait until he gives you the order to vent the fire apartment windows. If not, you can vent the fire apartment windows as soon as it is appropriate.
Okay, let's stick with the same scenario, Ladders still cannot reach the fire apartment windows, but this time it's a high-rise, fireproof multiple dwelling. What does the roof man do?
If the fire is not within proximity of the roof, he does the same thing as in the shorter buildings. Get to the floor above the fire. The only difference is the route. He takes the elevator to just below the fire. Then he notifies his officer which enclosed stairway he is taking to the floor above the fire.
Okay, Lou, same high-rise, but this time the fire is on a lower floor and it can be reached by ladders. What does the roof man do?
The roof man will have to go to the floor above the fire with his tools for VES.
Okay, I think we've covered just about everything except how about if the fire was on an upper floor in close proximity to the roof? What about that one?
A fire within close proximity to the roof man shall take the elevator to the floor below the fire. Notify his officer which stairway he is taking to the roof. When he gets there, chalk open the bulkhead door. Of course, the roof report must include the exact location of any trapped people, which may be seen, and any important information about fire conditions. All bulkhead doors should be opened. And the officer must be told when this has been done.
Okay, Lou, just how important is communications at one of these jobs?
Communications is very important. The roofman must communicate his position to his officer because at times he will be operating in a very precarious position. Also, the officer in charge cannot see much of the operation and is depending on the roofman for precise reports.
The final type of construction we'll cover is the private dwelling. There are two types, the flat roof and the peaked roof. And depending on which of the two is involved, the roofman's job will change. John, is the crew out in the field ready to go? John?
No, not yet, Joe.
Okay, let us know so we can switch to you out in the field.
Okay, I will.
Thanks, John. While the location crew is setting up, what tools should the first to arrive roofman take?
The hook, the 15 to 25 foot extension ladder are the tools the first arriving roofman uses.
Where should he go with these tools? What should he do?
At a private dwelling with a peaked roof, he must raise the extension ladder to the top floor, not the attic, the top floor to VES. Now, where he'll go to raise the portable ladder depends upon whether the area ladder or the bucket can reach the front of the house. If the area ladder or the bucket cannot be used in front, then the front is where the roofman should raise the portable ladder and operate.
Okay, let's get this right. An area ladder or tower ladder in the front, the roofman goes to the side or rear. No area ladder or bucket in front, the roofman stays at the front to operate.
Right, for a peaked roof house.
Ready to go out here, Joe.
John, how about butting the portable ladder?
If the ladder can't be butted against some physical object, get someone nearby to help, or get on your handy-talkie and call for help. Then you should climb to the top of perhaps a porch, some kind of physical platform that he can operate from to get in on the top floor and conduct a search.
That's the roofman's first concern at a peaked roof house. For sure, there are bedrooms up there, and they must be searched. If the roofman goes in alone to do this, he must let his officer know on the handy-talkie.
And if there's no garage, no porch, onto which the roofman can climb to operate?
If he must operate from the top of the portable ladder, then butting the portable ladder is very important.
In a driveway, a ladder can at times be butted against the next house. Screened or open porches may not provide fire protection from fire venting below and must be evaluated before use.
How are procedures different for a flat roof private dwelling, John?
For a flat roof, the roofman goes to the roof. If he can't use the aerial or tower ladder, then he uses a portable ladder. Once on the roof, he opens scuttles and skylights and vents top floor windows. Also, returns must be opened to check for fire in the cockloft when there is a top floor fire or if the officer tells him to. If there is a fire in the cockloft, tell your officer and get ready to begin cutting the roof.
Lou, how about the second to arrive, roofman?
Easy. He works at the direction of his officer. His tool assignment changes, though. He takes a hook and a Halligan tool.
John, do you have any final thoughts for us?
Yeah. In attached private dwellings, don't use the adjacent building to gain access to the roof, because this kind of construction shares some of the features of row frames.
Okay, John, see you back here in the studio. Lieutenant J. Tavalero, thanks very much for being with us.
It's nice to have been here, Joe.
New York City is the kind of place that will make a liar out of anyone who says a particular type of building will always have a certain feature, or that another kind of construction never will. It's a city of exceptions to general rules, and sometimes the exceptions are illegal. The best that can be said when talking about construction is almost always, or usually, or practically never. So be flexible in your approach to a situation. If what you're doing doesn't work, try something else, and follow safety procedures, including wearing your mask. The next step is up to you. You've got to take the knowledge and put it to work by being a roofman. You can do it. After all, the most experienced, confident roofmen on the job have all had that first tour when at roll call the officer said, "You've got the roof."